first step to prove any argument is to make some observations. And the first one that should stick out to you is that your premises are all truth functional compounds. This gives you two related insights. One is that EI and UI are not going to be your starting places. Relatedly, if we're not using EI or UI, at least not first, then what are we doing? And it's going to be those same old rules that we inherited from the propositional logic. Modus ponens, modus tollens, maybe some of the replacement rules. Another generic or general observation to make, which is that this proof is likely to be a CQ proof. And the reason is because of the tildes mixed in with the quantifiers. Now, just to be clear, CQ is safe on a sentence that has no tildes, as long as you add two tildes and switch the quantifier. And so CQ might even be an option in this first premise where there aren't any tildes, but certainly a telltale that CQ is a rule that you're going to want to use in your proof is when you have a mix of quantifiers and tildes. Now, for any proof, there's always a little trial and error. And so if you can even only make these two observations, then at least you have some guidance on what to trial and error with. For example, maybe this is all you see, and so you're going to try CQ on line 1. Is this a productive line? You're not going to know ahead of time. Write it out or write it out on the side as a note and just make more observations. Is this new sentence a sentence that hooks up with anything that I've got going on or with things that I can get easily? And if the answer is no, don't think of your work in thinking about this option as wasted time. It was necessary time for you to develop the proof. Now, in this particular case, though, this next line does not seem very productive. And if we go back to this first observation and remind ourselves, okay, so we're looking at MP or MT or the replacement rules. Taking a look at your premises, notice that line 3 is taughtable. Why? Because it gives you a sentence that seems easier to work with. Right? For example, it gives you a sentence that is going to be the negation of the consequent at line 1. So then you can use modus tollens. Is that necessarily going to get you anything? Well, see, and you'll find that you get a sentence that if you try to pair up with other things that are going on in your proof already or that you think you can get, notice that it is a sentence that is primed for CQ and that universal generalizations are friends, right? They're easy to work with, they're easy to instantiate, and in particular, in this case, they'll instantiate in a way that gives us the negation of the left-hand disjunct at line 2, which will get us the remaining disjunct, which notice is the universal generalization of our desired conclusion. And so we can get our conclusion from UI. Now, the crucial takeaway here is not that you, at your stage in the proof progression, should necessarily be able to see the proof in one go. It's that proof construction really is a discovery process, and it's a question of making observations and then maybe testing out an observation on a line or 2 or 3. And once you've got that new line, to see if that gives you any more information that you can use to make more observations. It means even if you only got this far, pausing and making your observations again. What do I already have in my proof? Where am I trying to get? Oh, wait a minute. Line 4 gives me the resources to use modus tollens. Making your observations can help you find the rest of that pathway. And so since we do have the resources for modus tollens, you can go ahead and derive the negation of that antecedent. Notice that the negation guards the quantifier, and so there is no EI possible here. We can use our trusty friend CQ to get us a sentence that we can instantiate. Now with UI, we have our choice of instantial letter, but since we anticipate being able to use the instance with line 2, then of course the instantial letter A is preferred. And we wanted this to DS with line 2, because that gives us a sentence that we can use UI on. With UI, we have a choice of instantial letter, And here it makes sense to use B so that we can match up with our conclusion. Now, this proof does also proceed indirectly. Now, the pull towards indirect proof is likely just that the conclusion is something whose opposite is easy to work with. That is to say, HB as an assumption seems easy to work with. Now, this proof can be completed this way. And I think the main thing to watch out for is to make sure that you resist universal generalizing on line 4. UG, of course, is not permitted over constants. Generalization seems to be the way that we want to go here because line 4 is the opposite of the right-hand disjunct at line 2. UG is not an option. EG is. Now, at first blush, EG might not seem like it hooks up in the right way with premise 2, but notice that when we CQ on line 5, and now we've got the negation of the right-hand disjunct, that's going to permit 26DS. Notice that we can derive the antecedent at line 1 for modus ponens, and that is to say, we can existentially generalize on line 7 in order to derive that everything is an F. Now, with indirect proof, be open to any self-contradiction. In part, this is an application of the same general principle, which is always be making observations. Generate a new line or two and make a new set of observations. Don't get tunnel vision, so to say, and fix on one particular sentence as the sentence that you must derive. Because on the one hand, in the proof discovery process, maybe it's not actually a sentence that you can derive. And more generally speaking, it's just that there might be a more efficient pathway, right? It's like walking through the woods, and if you don't keep your peripheral vision open for possibilities, you might miss a shortcut that gets you to wherever you're going a little faster. In this case, don't forget that we can use tautology on line 3, and then we've got this self-contradiction, which means that I'm able to close my subproof to derive my desired conclusion. I didn't give as many details in terms of how to develop the proof. A good bit of practice with any proof actually is to rewind the video a little bit and pause it at each new line. And before you hear my explanation again or see the next line again, make your own observations and see what you get, see how far you get. And in the big picture of things, remember that effective proof construction really is about knowing the rules and collecting different tactics and strategies. And the way to collect different tactics and strategies is really just to see them and attend to the different ways of thinking about proof construction.